Hey guys, and welcome to Silk Synopsis Breakdown. In this video, I'm going to give you guys a complete rundown on Rodney from Supercell. A down-to-earth, light-hearted young man with no clear direction in his life and a significant mother wound is finally about to discover that his path won't be as uncertain as he once believed. So for those of you who are not familiar with Supercell, it's a show on Netflix and it was written by Rapman and it came out June of this year, 2024. And it's about 5 black people from South London who have a family history of sickle cell, which is a blood disorder. And in turn, they end up getting superpowers. And I'm going to be going through each of the characters. Obviously, today is going to be Rodney. So, let's get started.
You seem a bit stressed, mate.
So, Rodney is played by Calvin Demba. I was first introduced to him from the show Youngers, which came out about 10 years ago. And he was also on Hollyoaks and this drama series on BBC called Life. Off the bat, Rodney comes across as this really, really down-to-earth guy. Almost like a Essex fella, like a geezer. Really, really East End. And in the first episode, him and his best friend Spud, who he's really, really, really close with, they share a flat together and everything. You know, he's complaining to him because he's been trying to deal, the green stuff all day and hasn't really been able to get more than what he needs, to have proper stability within his life. And that he should have just stayed working at Tesco's because whatever he's doing right now, it's not cutting it. It's not cutting any kind of check. Something that I caught on to whilst I was rewatching this episode so that I could take notes was that when he was about to leave the chicken shop with his friend, he was glaring at this mother and son, and it was a white mother and a mixed race son. And Rodney seems to be in awe when he sees this, but at the same time he seems a little bit sad, like as if he's reminiscing on something that he's gone through with his mum. So in the next scene, Rodney is unable to start his car, which is something that he's really, really frustrated by because he's on the phone to a seller because obviously he's trying to buy so he can sell, right? And the car's just not working. So then the seller's like, yeah, I'm going to find a new dealer, right? If you don't get here within a certain amount of minutes, I'm out. So he ends up getting out of his car and trying to catch the bus, running. This guy's running. And then he ends up running so fast that he ends up in Scotland. I know this sounds crazy. He's like, what the hell? And then he even ends up asking this resident of Scotland he's like to her, where am I? And she's like, yeah, this is Scotland, Edinburgh. So he's like shocked out of his mind. I think anyone would be. I know I would. So throughout this is the first episode actually. He's the first one that gets the power, right? And I guess it's just really shocking. He's like, whoa. He ends up getting back to London because he ends up being able to kind of use the gift of the gab to get back to London by communicating with this Scottish guy. And he's like to him, how much does it cost to get back to London? And the guy's like 70 odd quid. He ends up selling him some of the produce, the green stuff. And he ends up back there, right? And he's like to his friend Spud, who he lives with, like, this is what happened. He even showed him the ticket from Edinburgh to London, back to London, right? But his friend is like, nah, I don't believe you. I don't even think that I would believe that. Like, if your friend was like, oh yeah, I was able to run so fast to Scotland, you're not gonna believe them, right? So eventually, right, I think it's in episode 2, he ends up believing it. I mean, he has no choice but to believe him because Rodney shows him how fast he can run. Like, he ends up showing Spud within the flat, right? And he ends up like damaging the flat a little bit, and I'm like, damn, couldn't you guys like done this outside or something like that? So with this newfound power that Rodney has, he's using it to his advantage, like so that he's able to deal and make money. And before you know it, him and Spud are making money, like proper money, and they can finally see like the fruits of their labor. But you know, when people get too excited when something like this happens, right, and it ends up being to their own detriment, so they continued with the dealing and everything. And I think it's Spud who is like, so Spud is like, if you don't see me in 5 minutes, I'll give it to you for free. And Rodney's like, yeah, that's the line that we're going to use. And obviously it makes sense because he's got this newfound power, we can run really fast. But what ends up happening is that a gang who is led by this guy called Crazy end up finding out, you know, about all of the clientele that they have essentially got from them. So Braggs and this guy called Masha, right, they're at the drug house, and Masha is like to the guy Braggs, you know, how are you going to allow for people to take our clientele? So Braggs does have Spud's number. He ends up getting it. He has it in his phone for some reason. And he ends up calling Spud, right, whilst Rodney's sleeping. And he's like, yeah, come up here to this address. And this is like their, you know, product where the product house. I'm going to call it the product house, right? The headquarters. He calls him, come down. I've got the good stuff for you, right? So, to cut a long story short, it ends up being a setup. They end up calling him down there just so they could get revenge because of the clientele being taken away from them. And then sadly, Rodney's best friend, Spud, ends up going into a coma because he's been beaten up so badly. So for this video, I am just going to be focused on breaking down Rodney's character, so I won't go too much into detail about how everything ties in together, because I think in order for me to do that, I need to do like every single breakdown, and then everything will make sense. But if you really watch the show, then you will know that, you know, Spud does make it out, and Spud, I want to touch on Spud just a little bit, just because, you know, Rodney and Spud are the best of friends, so it would be strange for me not to, you know, make some points about Spud as a character on the show. Spud is a conspiracy theorist. Like, he warns Rodney. He's like, they were in the calf one time, right, or they were just talking or something, and he was like, you know, be careful because the government, they might watch you, right? And as they were, because there were so many scenes within this show where there was like CCTV cameras constantly, like after certain shots, right? And that was really interesting to watch that, to see that, right? And also he's very encouraging and supportive of Rodney, and you can tell that they've been close since young because he wants the best for him. That's what I'm trying to say. He even wanted Rodney to help one of the other characters out. Like, he wants things that are, you know, heartfelt. He does things that are heartfelt, and he does it with good intentions. So I think he's the one who keeps Rodney grounded, and I think we're going to be able to see that throughout season 2 even more. You know, how much he's able to help him stay in control and things like that. And he was mentioning certain things like, you know, the butterfly effect, and it seems to me that he knows a lot about these kinds of things. So I think it will be really interesting to see how that plays out with Spud. So whilst Spud is in hospital, Rodney is obviously distraught. You know, this is his best friend, and he doesn't even know if he's gonna make it out alive. So, you know, it's a very troubling time for him. And in that time, he ends up visiting his mum, right? And this is where it gets Rodney. A little bit more layered. So clearly we can see that Rodney and his mum have not seen each other for a while, right? They're catching up, and he's letting her know that Spud is in hospital, and she feels really, sad for him and everything. He then asks her, Mum, can I stay here? I'm going through a lot, just until Spud recovers from the coma. And she says no, right? And she says it kind of like abruptly, especially for the situation, the predicament that Rodney is in. Like, your friend is in a coma. Why wouldn't you want to stay at your mum's? And she's like, no, you can't stay here. You know how Greg feels about it. And Greg is the man that she's with, the man that she loves. And I think Greg is Rodney's stepdad, something along those lines. And I think he's been in the picture for a while. But the funniest thing is, it's not even funny, is that Greg is racist. And she responds to Rodney's, asking and says, Greg, I don't know how he would feel about you staying here, And Rodney says to her, but he's racist. He continues to plead with his mother, saying, I'll be like a tenant, I'll pay up, I'm making proper money, I've changed now, And she's still like, no. But it's really questionable, that she would even allow for a man to run out her own son out of her own life. This is her son, and it's kind of a rejection against her son's blackness. And although she doesn't seem to be a horrible person, if you were a mother, right, why would you allow for anyone to break apart your bond with your child, right? And it was also questionable because it makes me think that Rodney's mum and the biological father of Rodney, right, maybe the relationship that they have wasn't necessarily genuine, because why would you be rejecting your son and his blackness when you know damn well who the father is, right? And now we can see that, Rodney's background, right, and his upbringing, right, of having the rejection against his blackness and feeling like, he has no sense of belonging, ties in with his power of having super speed, because the connotations of doing things with rapid speed include being someone who's reckless, impulsive, someone who wants instant gratification, inability to think things through, anxiety, feeling like you're demoralized, feeling confused, detached, aloof. The list goes on, right? And it's like in the beginning, when we meet Rodney, he's just coming out of an alleyway asking people, do you want to buy some of my product? It just seems to me that his childhood, he was maybe neglected and unwanted by this someone who's supposed to be like a father figure, right? If your biological father is not in the picture, and he wasn't there for him. He rejected his blackness, and he had to move out when he was 16. So the power that he has, it manifests into the power that he has, where he's running from himself. He's running away from the mother wound that he also has as well, because it's like, yeah, his mum is not, as I said, not a conniving person, but then again I feel like she is, because why would you reject your son's racial identity, right? So he has identity issues. We can clearly see that he's confused. He feels hopeless. It shows in his life. It shows in his personal life, right? And the only thing that seems to be keeping him grounded is, his best friend Spud. Something else that I noticed about Rodney's character was the fact that his style, right? His style was really expressive and loud, and he was wearing blue a lot. Like, that's what I noticed. I'm like, why is this guy always in blue? But I think they've done that to represent, his larger than life character and how he's really eccentric and everything. And he keeps things cool, right? Although he's had this really troublesome background, he's still witty, he's still down to earth, and he's grounded despite what he's been through. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing Rodney's growth in season 2 and how much his character develops, and how he will get along with the other characters and how that dynamic will play out. I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see him, go from being this aloof guy with no sense of direction to someone who has complete control. I would like to thank you guys for watching this video if you have, and be sure to like, comment and subscribe and share.